Ooh, I should probably turn off my notifications. All right, hey guys, welcome back. We are here just continuing, right? Our series of being a child of God. Last time we talked about being a citizen, what that looks like. And now we're diving into the brand, what it means to bear the brand and have the brand of a Christ believer. Now, if you guys don't have it yet, let me see if we can get this here for you. Focus up, focus up. There you go. You guys can get the Church Center app, right? Once you guys get that, let's see if it's going to work for us here. We can go all the way to our section here, and we want to go to youth, and we can put the lesson. So, if you guys have that, let's do so, okay? What we are diving into is, once again, being branded or bearing the brand of the cross, okay? So, this is what it says here in John chapter 13, verses 34 through 35. It says this here, "So now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples." Now, it's important, right, that we understand that Jesus is talking here and he says that I have a new commandment for you, right? And it's crazy because this is a new commandment. Jesus is telling us that this is one thing that he is commanding us to. And he says to love each other, and not only to love each other, but to love each other as he has loved us. And then not only that, he finishes it off by saying, your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. So there's a couple big ideas that we're going to dive into today. The first of which is this, is that we have to love each other as Jesus loved us. Now, that sounds easy at first because it's like, yeah, I can love, we can love sports, love other things, right? It's easy to love, but there's a caveat to it, right? He puts a standard to it. And the standard isn't just to love, but the standard is to love like Jesus loved. So there are some examples that I want to throw out there for us that Jesus gives us as examples of how he loves, because it'd be wrong of Jesus to tell us to love the way he did, and we don't know how he loves or don't have anything, but we have the Gospels, and the Gospels, the first four books of the New Testament, are very real depictions of how Jesus loves. So if we go to John chapter 13, which is just earlier from the section that we're reading here, what's amazing is that we see that Jesus is washing the feet of his disciples. That's a crazy thing to think about because Jesus is God. And yet when he comes to earth, he doesn't come to be served, but he comes to serve, right? We as humans, we love the idea of love. We desire love. And when we think of wanting and desiring love, it often comes in the form of what can someone else do for me? I want a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever, right? I want this, this, and this. Or I love this because it can help me. We fantasize about love and what it can do for us. But what we see here in John chapter 13, earlier in this chapter that we're reading from, is that Jesus is washing the feet of his disciples. That is so radically different because that means that the first thing about love isn't you, it's about others, okay? It's the idea that we are not to be served, but to serve others. So, step number one to loving others the way Jesus loved is to serve others. And we are entering into the last quarter of 2026, which is just crazy to think about. But coming 2027, we're looking to start adding more ministries to our youth ministry. And these are going to come in the form of, for example, I'm going to call them the bridge bandits, people who just love to talk and connect with others, right? We're going to have plot and plays, and that's going to be for those of us who are able to really write and theatrically tell, right, biblical truths. And we'll have the worship team, or what we're going to be calling them, worship warriors. You can jump in on that, right? These are just different ways that you can serve here at church. That doesn't mean that it's going to be limited to just serving like that, because we can serve and love others outside of that. But those are just some opportunities that are going to be coming up in 2027. Moving on from there, we get to Luke chapter 23. And Jesus is hanging on the cross, and people are spitting and yelling at his face, right? And what Jesus does there is something phenomenal. He says to forgive, and he prays to God the Father, and he says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." In the face of someone yelling at you, it's really easy to flip the switch. And it's really easy to be like, well, now I'm justified for what I'm about to do next. Even though you could put them in their place, even though Jesus could have put them in their place, he forgives them and he prays for them. And that's huge because, once again, when we think about love, we think about how people can build us up. A lot of us like having either that friend or we search for a boyfriend or girlfriend so they can give us the reassurance so that we can feel good about ourselves. But what happens when somebody doesn't make you feel good about yourself? Jesus shows us that even though people are coming at you and they're tearing you down, you're not to turn on them, but instead you are to forgive them and you are to pray for them. That is one other way, right, that we can love others the way that Jesus loved us. Lastly, here, just another example that we have from the Bible is in Mark chapter 2. Notice I'm grabbing these from the Gospels, right? Like I said, the first four books of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, give us very awesome, concrete ways that we can love like Jesus. And this is the last one, Mark 2. There's plenty more, but this is the last one we're talking about today, is when Jesus comes and he sits and he eats. We've talked about this before if we've been in, or if you guys have been in class with me, but when we are at school and it's time for lunch, right? It's either something we love or something we dread. Because number one, if it's something we love, we probably have friends that we want to go sit with. If it's something that we dread, it's because we either may not have anyone to sit with, or we just don't want to be with anybody, or other things of that nature. But when we eat, right, and when we join in something like eating together, that is something that you really do with people that you're comfortable with. Which is why sometimes you might not just sit with anyone during lunchtime because you might not be comfortable with anyone. Jesus here, he comes to a dinner. And instead of sitting with the Pharisees, people who know the Old Testament law, he comes and he sits with the beggars. He comes and he sits with people of the low class, is what they would define it as. And the people ask him, like, hey, why are you sitting with the sinners? Why are you sitting with people that are outcasts of society? This is the last way that we can love like Jesus loved, right? There is this word called inclusivity and exclusivity. I guess it's two words. But inclusive or include means to bring together or to be open to, right? And then to exclude or exclusivity means to exclude or keep things out. What we see here is that in Mark chapter 2, Jesus is inclusive because he is not kicking those sinners out. He's not kicking the low of the low people out, but instead he sits with them. And so he's being inclusive because he cares about them. But he does say this, right? He said that he did not come for the healthy, but he comes for the sick. And what he means by that is that he is there to share with them the good news and the hope that is in his name, in Jesus' name, right? And that's super important because he is inclusive with how he cares for others, but he is exclusive with how he is truthful to others. And that's super, super important because the world that we live in tells us to just be inclusive in every single regard. Love everybody, and if somebody wants to be whatever they want, you can let them be whatever they want because that's what love is. And I'm here to tell you guys today that when we read the Bible, Jesus displays that there is inclusivity when it comes to the Christian faith, but there is exclusivity when it comes to the biblical truth that we are to live and display. And what that means is that Jesus desires to bring everybody to him. But in order to bring everybody to him, he's telling people to turn from their ways, right? Which means that we have to deny ourselves of things that we may want, or we have to tell people if they're in the wrong that they are in the wrong and that we need to help step alongside them and guide them, right? To be along with us in the way that Jesus is showing us, okay? So, a couple ways, right, to love like how Jesus loved. Number one is to serve and not be served, right? You have to put in the effort to give, right? Not the other way around where you are waiting for somebody to give to you. Number two is to forgive and to pray, right? When somebody isn't making you feel special, when you aren't feeling special, you aren't supposed to sit there, sulk, and have a pity party. You are to forgive and you are to pray for. Okay? That's once again a huge important thing to understand because it's very easy to fall into that and just hate the world. But God calls us to forgive and to pray. And lastly, once again, we're to be inclusive with how we care for and bring people together, but we are supposed to be exclusive into how we preach the truth of the Bible. Okay? So that's what we have, right? Is that we have to love like Jesus. Now, one other thing, right? I'm going to get back to John chapter 13, verse 34 through 35, is that love not only is what we are called to do, but love proves that we are Jesus' disciples. Once again, it says, your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. Okay? We know a thing or two about brands and logos. I'm wearing a shirt right now. If you couldn't read this and you had to guess what this was just um, by the logo, if you live in Minnesota, you might know. If you're a fan of baseball, if you don't, then you don't, right? But this is a logo, and this logo helps us to understand, like, hey, that is for X, Y, and Z. I have my computer here, and if I can move this, you guys probably know what this logo is, right? We have logos. Our logos represent brands and so forth. And we live in a world full of brands and logos. If you open up your phone, let's go ahead, we'll open up our phone, right? There are plenty of apps to choose from, and each app has a logo in front of it so that you can know this is that, right? The brand and the logo of the Christian faith is important for us to understand because if we don't understand it, then we will misrepresent it, never find it, or may never lead other people to be able to find it. Okay? So, the other thing to understand is that when we have a brand and when we have a logo, there are things and or there are not things, but there are brands and there are logos that we trust in, right? Like you saw there, I have an iPhone and I have a MacBook, which probably means that I use and trust Apple a lot. And I can tell you that I do because I've had a lot of experience with it. I've trusted it and I've tried it over probably the past decade, right? It got me through all of my high school and into my college and so forth, right? But you might have some brands, right, that you try and you trust. If you like using makeup, you might have a store that you trust. You might trust Sephora and the products and brands that they have in Sephora. If you're a guy, right, maybe you like playing games. And there are some publishers, brands out there that we do trust and ones that we don't trust, like EA, right, for example. So our brand is important because it's what people see initially that draws them in to experiencing the brand and the lifestyle as a whole. So we have to ask ourselves, like, what is the brand of the Christian love? And that is something that we can see in First Peter chapter 2, verse 21. Let me read this. It says, to this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. You see, biblical love is willing to pay the price, right? Now, think about that for a second. Biblical love is willing to pay the price. You see, Jesus demonstrated his love by laying down his life. And a question that we have to ask ourselves is if our love doesn't cost us anything, do we actually love? Right? And what I mean by that is, for example, if it didn't cost me anything to go out of the way to do something for someone, did I actually do it out of love? Right? Because there are some things, right, that are easy for us to do and that we simply just do because we do have the ability to do it. But then the question comes, what do you do when you're in a situation where something that you need to do conflicts with something that you want to do, right? And you can begin to see how when you love someone, when you love something, you sacrifice something just as Jesus sacrificed his life in order to love or pursue that thing. When it comes to biblical love, we have to be willing to pay the price to love others. When someone inconveniences you, we have to be willing, right? We have to be willing to pay the price to say, hey, you know what? I'll put aside what I need or what I needed to do, right? To listen to my friend, to be there for them, to encourage them, to pray for them, right? Love oftentimes causes us to be inconvenienced, but that's the point is that when we love, we sacrifice and we suffer in order that Christ may be made known. So, with all of this in mind, right, what is the application, right? What we have to understand is that love is not a force, right, that attracts two people together. Because I think that's what we often have a concept of, right? Oh, I love this person, so I'm drawn towards this person, right? But love is not that force that draws you to someone because you're attracted to them. Rather, I'm going to flip it on its head. Love is the force that brings together two people who could not be further apart. Now think about that once again just for a second. Love is the force that brings together two people that could not be further apart. And that goes once again back to the idea of sacrificing and paying a price. We could have never been further from God, but Jesus in his love for us died on the cross, bringing us together, being that force that brings us back to be with God. When you have friendships, you might find yourselves in moments where somebody has wronged you or done something that hurt you, and you two can never be further apart. And it's easy to say, well, I'm done with this person, never being with them, talking to them ever again. But then we have to ask the question, well, then did you actually love them? Because if you did love them, you would find that force to pull you back together, even though there's everything trying to separate you two. And you would forgive, you would pray, and you would serve, and you would find truth in that so you could, once again, retain that relationship with said individual. You see, the brand and the logo of Christianity is not the cross, right, that you might wear around the neck. It's not the stuff or the logos or the words that you might wear on a shirt. It's not the sticker that you might have on a car. But the picture of Christianity is Jesus. And Jesus is love. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is this: what brand do you reflect? Because whether you know it or not, you are reflecting a brand. You might be reflecting what it looks like to be a gamer. You might be reflecting what it looks like to be someone who loves shopping at Target. You might be reflecting what it looks like to be a high schooler or a middle schooler. But when we look at the big overall picture, right? When someone looks at you, do you reflect Jesus? When they look at you, do they see Jesus or do they see something else? When they look at you, do they think that you're crazy? Because how is there someone that is so crazy enough to have their life inconvenienced because you simply love others with no strings attached, right? Do you love the way that Jesus does? And when you love like that, are others looking at you and are they seeing Jesus? Or do they see that you love yourself or love others more, right? So, once again, think about it. You have a brand, and there's a brand of Christianity that we have to bear. That brand being Jesus and the cross and the life that he lived. Do you reflect that brand? Do you love the way that Jesus loved? That's what I have for you guys today. I hope to see you guys soon. God bless and have a wonderful, wonderful day.